Let's begin with some big breaking news from South Korea. And South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol has declared an emergency martial law, accusing the country's opposition of controlling the parliament, sympathizing with North Korea, and also for paralyzing the government with anti-state activities. Yoon Suk-yeol made the announcement in a televised briefing, vowing to eradicate pro-North Korean forces and protect the constitutional democratic order.
저는 북한 공산 세력의 위협으로부터
I declare martial law to protect the Free Republic of Korea from the threat of North Korean communist forces, to eradicate the despicable pro-North Korean anti-state forces that are plundering the freedom and happiness of our people, and to protect the free constitutional order.
망국의 나락으로 떨어지고 있는
The unexpected move comes as tensions rise between President Yoon's People Power Party and the main opposition Democratic Party over next year's budget bill. Opposition members of parliament last week approved a significantly downsized budget plan through a parliamentary committee. The opposition cut around 4.1 trillion won from Yoon's proposed 677 trillion won budget plan, cutting the government's reserve fund and activity budgets for Yoon's office, the prosecution, police, and the state audit agency. The president says he intends to rebuild a free and democratic country through the emergency. Riot police have blocked South Korean members of parliament from entering the country's parliament building in Seoul. Reacting to the newly imposed law, opposition leader Lee Jae-myung called the move illegal and also asked the public to gather to parliament in protest. And now the South Korean National Assembly is voting to block the law. Martial law normally means government by military rule and the suspension of parliament and ordinary law. South Korea's military has said that all parliamentary activities and parliamentary parties are now banned. South Korea's opposition earlier this week accused the president of preparing to declare martial law to avoid being impeached for alleged abuses of power. After the declaration of martial law, supporters of the opposition party gathered outside parliament and chanted slogans denouncing the law. Meanwhile, South Korea's ally said that they were closely monitoring the situation. Both the countries have a decades-old mutual defense treaty, which means both must come to the aid of the other if they are ever attacked. Also, Chinese embassy urged its citizens to exercise caution after martial law was declared. All right, so this is live in Seoul. As you can see, lawmakers in South Korea have voted already to block the martial law decree announced by President Yoon Suk-yeol. 190 lawmakers in the 300-seat National Assembly voted to overturn the measure. It's still unclear what effect the vote will have on the martial law declaration because as it stands now, there is no parliamentary action, there is no parliament as ordered by the president. Under South Korean law, the president is obliged to comply with the vote. But as you can see from your screens, this is live in Seoul outside the parliament. And we do understand that the 190 lawmakers have voted to overturn the martial law measure imposed by the president of South Korea. And we have our correspondent Susan Teherani who's joining us live in this broadcast, and we know that South Korea is a key regional U.S. ally and home to tens of thousands of American troops. Susan, is there any reaction from the United States?
The United States did react, as you mentioned earlier. A National Security Council spokesperson said that the administration is in contact with the ROK, Republic of Korea, and its government, and is monitoring the situation closely. As you mentioned, not only do the two countries have a strategic military alliance. About 28,400 to 500 U.S. troops are stationed in Korea. But also there's an economic partnership that's very strong, one of the biggest in Asia. And of course, regional security and stability is at stake right now, not only for those U.S. troops, but the United States relies on South Korea not only to be a sort of a deterrence to nuclear North Korea, but also China's belligerent activities in the region as well. And of course, at least until now, South Korea was a partner in democracy with the United States. The Biden administration had really put an emphasis on the, quote, democratic values of South Korea. So it's only natural that the United States is monitoring this very closely. As for now, we have that quote from the spokesperson at the National Security Council. We're expected to get more reactions as things develop. But that vote by the parliament was very significant. And it was expected to a certain extent because of the opposition in the country.
Is our correspondent in New York. Susan, stay with us. If you're just joining us, this is what is happening in South Korea. South Korea has been plunged into political uncertainty after President Yoon Suk-yeol's declaration of martial law in a surprise late-night address. Lawmakers right now, we do understand, have since voted to block his decree. It's still unclear what effect the vote will have on the martial law declaration, but we do understand that 190 lawmakers have already voted to lift this martial law. The 190 lawmakers are in the 300-seat parliament, which is under obligation or under South Korean law. The president is obliged to comply with a vote in parliament, but that, as it stands, the parliament does not function under martial law. Yoon says the move was necessary to protect the country from communist forces in North Korea. His decision comes as the main opposition Democratic Party has repeatedly attempted to impeach government officials, which Yoon says has paralyzed the government. Members of South Korea's parliament at one point appear to have clashed with authorities outside the country's National Assembly building in Seoul. Those were the images that you were seeing earlier on your screens. The last time a South Korean president declared martial law was back in 1980 during a nationwide uprising led by students and labor unions. Susan Tehrani is our correspondent in New York. We do understand also that South Korean stocks have dropped sharply in U.S. trading. Do we know that?
Yeah, very natural for the stock market to react immediately to this instability in South Korea. Like I mentioned, South Korea is really an ally of not only Washington, but here in the United States of Wall Street as well. So we will be watching the markets very closely. These stocks did drop tremendously because of this unrest over there and this uncertainty for the political future in South Korea. Like you said, we'll have to wait and see how this martial law is going to proceed, considering the fact that the parliament voted it down. How much control will you ultimately have on the situation, and how the United States wants to interject or react? Of course, the markets are the first to react, but we do know that President Joe Biden is in Africa right now. We've been told that he's been briefed. Any public comment coming from him is going to be watched very closely as well, and it's going to affect those markets as well.
All right. Susan Tehrani, thank you. Susan Tehrani is our correspondent from New York. And if you're just joining us once again, this is the current development in South Korea. The president of South Korea, Yoon Suk-yeol, has declared martial law, and we do understand that 190 members of parliament have voted to lift the martial law, and the president is obliged to comply with the vote. Now we'll have to wait and see if the president does indeed comply with the law, with the vote. For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.